Hello, my fellow fans of the small. I'm Lara Blair, and this is Tiny Worlds, Big Stories. Here we celebrate the artists who craft small-scale magic, miniature makers, diorama dreamers, and dollhouse designers, and uncover the stories and creativity that bring these tiny worlds to life. Whether you build tiny scenes or simply love them, welcome. Today's episode is extra special. And full disclosure, I sound like I swallowed a frog and asked it to co-host. I had a brutal cold while recording this, but there was absolutely no way I was rescheduling. Some interviews you protect at all costs, and this was one of them. Because today I get to talk with someone who is genuinely a rock star in my creative universe, Chelsea of Chelsea Makes. Chelsea is one of those artists who quietly redefines what's possible in the miniature world. From childhood Barbie renovations made out of cardboard walls to working as a landscape architect, designing real-world environments, to becoming a fan favorite on Making It, to creating intricate miniature worlds for brands like Warby Parker and Barbie and L'Oreal and beyond, her creative journey is equal parts inspiring and deeply relatable. In this conversation, we talk about the courage it takes to pivot from a stable career into a full-time creative work, the behind-the-scenes reality of brand collaborations, the surprisingly emotional power of tiny objects, and how community and generosity have shaped the miniature and stop-motion world she's a part of. Chelsea also shares how persistence and, yes, being just strategically a little bit annoying helped her land major opportunities, how her real-life mid-century home renovation influences her miniature builds, and why she believes sharing knowledge instead of gatekeeping makes the entire creative community stronger. Scratchy voice and all, I would record this conversation 10 times over because it was that inspiring. Let's dive in. Hello, Chelsea. How are you?
Hello. Good. Thanks for having
I'm
me.
just thrilled to have you. I'm a big fan. I'm excited to hear about all of the things. So we're going to start with the first question, which is, my favorite one. What were you like when you were little? And what did you play with? And were you a miniature fanatic and all the things?
Oh, yeah. So my sister and I were big Barbie fans. So we didn't have like any doll houses, but we had an IKEA shelving unit that we had all of our Barbies on. We were constantly making cardboard walls and all sorts of that. And then I do also have this like very foggy memory of every time I would have to get a cavity filled, which was a lot as a kid because I just had bad teeth, my mom would take me to this store that had miniatures, and as my prize for being good at the dentist, I got to pick a miniature. So that was pretty good.
That good mom. That's a good mom thing because it
I
makes
know,
the
and I
dentist a
still
little
have
bit
a
more
lot of those
bearable.
things that
That's
I
very
bought. All
cool.
the classic miniatures that you see at every mini store, like the little
Yeah,
gumball
yeah.
machine.
Oh, yeah. Were you design? I mean, like you wouldn't use that term when you were little, but did you like design? I mean, like
Oh,
moving your room
yeah.
around and things like that when you were little?
I had a really, really tiny room, so there wasn't a lot of I couldn't actually move my room around, but I think that's kind of where my love of making miniatures also came into play because a friend of mine had a dollhouse, and every time I would go over there, which was probably, once a week or more, we would be renovating a room in the dollhouse. And the
I
other
love
friend
it.
would come and she'd redo what we just redid. So it was constantly an ever evolving miniature space, which was
Little
fun.
did you know that you
I
were going to be
know,
using
right?
this. So when you went to school, I mean, it wasn't like I'm going to go to art school or whatever. You ended up going into architectural landscaping, correct?
Yeah. Yeah,
So
that's right.
tell us, I want to know about that and what did you love about it? Because I'm sure there were some things that were good. And then what
Sure,
did
yeah.
it limit you with creatively?
Yeah. So I often say that I'm a fairly risk-averse person. So when I was deciding to go to school, the idea of working for myself as an artist seemed really intimidating and having to figure out how I was going to get a paycheck. So I stumbled upon landscape architecture, which was, there was a little bit of creativity to it, but also it would allow me to sit at a desk and get paid and have health insurance, which
Yeah.
those things loved the health insurance part of it, I tell ya. But yeah, I mean, there was a lot of really good things about it because I do love nature, I do love plants, and honestly, like, I love CAD. I love designing in CAD. I love the
Oh,
meticulous. I loved
look at
creating
you.
documents. I know, it's a very weird thing to be like, "Yeah, that is my," like, I
Yeah.
was like, I'm good at this."
Born to do CAD. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. No one would ever that would definitely probably not be at the top of anyone's list, but it is something that I really liked. And I got to work on a lot of really cool projects, like a lot of national parks. And those were always really special because obviously those are some sacred spaces. And so to be able to contribute was really special. But, I think the downside was that there's so much red tape involved and
Mm.
whether, it would be years working on a project and then, at the 11th hour, the funds would get pulled out and it wouldn't go anywhere. So, yeah, so there was a lot of it's really disappointing to spend all that time and know that you're trying to do something good in the world only to have it kind of fall flat for just bureaucracy reasons.
Yeah. Yeah. Were you making, I mean, okay, so I know the deal with making it, 'cause if you live under a rock, you don't know that Chelsea was on Making It. But if you're listening to
5
the
years
show,
ago.
I'm pretty sure you know that she was on there. So, were you making stuff, like, on the side in addition to your landscape job? Like, how did that you watched the show, you thought, "I could apply for this." You obviously had some desire and some passion for it. Like, how did that come about?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question. I mean, in landscape architecture school and then maybe once or twice as a working professional, I had the opportunity to make models, and that was always my favorite part. And we moved to San Francisco. We were living in the Bay Area. We didn't have a lot of friends yet, and I knew I wanted to kind of build a community outside of work and do something a little bit more creative. And fortunately, there was a woodworking space just down the block from where I was working at the local high school. And so I started there and I was able to take some classes and started volunteering my time. And in exchange for that, the teacher let me, come in extra
Nice.
hours
Yeah.
and slowly like built up that relationship so that I was there quite often. Again, we're living in the California, San Francisco Bay Area. So we had a
Mm.
very, very tiny apartment. And after making, I think, one or two pieces of furniture, I realized that if
You're
I
full.
wanted, I was like, that's it. Okay, I'm done here to find a new hobby. Yeah, I was like, okay, I need to do something else. I was like, oh, I used to love miniatures. I still love miniatures. I just wasn't making them.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably 2016, maybe. So about
Okay.
10 years ago. So that was just when modern miniatures were coming into popularity. So I think that kind of just all happened at the same time. But yeah, so there was always an element of me making things outside of work, and I started
Yeah.
doing craft shows outside of work. Not because I, thought I'd ever be able to leave that job, but just because it was something that fulfilled a part of me that going through the bureaucratic landscape architecture world was not fulfilling.
Yeah, yeah, you knew how to put that other piece in there. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you applied to the show the first time. Tell me
Yeah.
about that, and then what made you just wanna push through and apply again, which I love
Yeah.
about you that you did that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad I did it too,
Yeah,
honestly.
right?
So I didn't apply for the first season. I applied the second season, and I think I had maybe one interview, and it didn't, it just didn't pan out. And so I was thinking, I'm not going to put myself through this stress again. It was really intense, just waiting for them to email you back, and I just
Yeah.
have zero chill. So it was a very difficult thing for me to do. Yeah, I was not.
I can relate to that.
I was like, I can't put myself through this again. This was the most straining thing ever. But I ended up and I for that first, round of applications, I had made a version of the Making It barn, which is where the show took place. And when I didn't get selected, I was like, well, what am I going to do with this barn? It's a reminder of how things didn't go right. Yeah, so that was pretty rough. But I was like, you know what? I'm just going to post it because I'm excited for the new season. And I
Smart.
posted it on Instagram, and the Making It Instagram reposted it. And
Of course.
I was like, "Okay, so they like it." So, the next year came around and I was like, "All right, I'm gonna give it one more try." And I really, I gave it my all. I just was I was so annoying to the casting director. I was probably emailing him every other day being like, "Any
That's what you
updates?
gotta
Any
do
updates?" Yeah.
sometimes. That's what you gotta
Honestly,
do. Yeah.
yeah, I think that, like, a lot of people are like, "Oh, like, how do you get," we'll get into this, I'm sure, but, like, "How do you get work?" or "How do you get
Right.
this?" You just have to be annoying, which I'm shockingly good at. So persistence is key, I think.
I love that. Okay, so excuse me. So you were on the show and it
Yep,
was an amazing experience,
it was.
obviously. I mean, you learned a lot and being able
Yeah.
to use the power tools and all the things. Did you ever in those moments think, I could do this for a living? Or
You
did
know,
you say, ah, putting on my landscape architecture stuff back
no.
when I'm
Well,
done?
I knew at the time I was still working at my job, and I knew that my coworkers were all extremely supportive. The ones that I was able to tell were all extremely supportive.
Hmm.
They were rooting me on, and I knew that I was gonna be going back to work after that.
Yeah.
So, there's one moment in the show where Amy says, "So, like, do you wanna do miniatures full time?" And I was like, "No, landscape architecture is great." But, anyone who knows me,
Yeah.
there was obviously clues that I was wanting to make that leap, and
Sure.
I just
Yeah.
didn't know, again, because I'm a risk-averse person, and the idea of giving up a job where, things were steady and I had health insurance
Mhm.
was
Yeah,
really,
I understand.
yeah,
I
it was
do,
a
I
daunting.
get it, as
Yeah,
every creative thinks about
right,
it, when
right,
they're gonna go off on their
yes.
own. So the show ends, and you do really well, and you're a fan favorite for sure, and then you start making stuff
Yeah,
still, right, after that. So I wanna
definitely.
know how long and what happened to cross over to go, "All right, I'm tossing up my landscape apron, and I'm going for it in the studio." Like, what happened there?
Yeah, so I think that the biggest thing actually is that, we were living in the Bay Area, but my family and my husband's family all live on the East Coast on Long Island and, in the DC area. And my sister was having her first baby, and we
Mm,
were always on the fence about whether or not we would stay in California. Obviously, it's expensive. And, I knew that if we stayed, I would never have the courage to leave my job. Also, just because, the
uh,
people at my job were amazing. They were so supportive and loving. And the idea of kind of, putting them out by leaving was daunting. But when we finally decided, "Okay, we're gonna put a deadline on when we move so that we can be there when my niece is born," and that coincided with, "Okay, well, if we're gonna move in with my parents in their basement so that we have a little bit of a cushion. That way, if I can't pull this off, we're not not able to pay rent," which was amazing, honestly, that really helped us out. And then, when I was putting in my notice, which I gave them, 2 months notice, because I don't know, felt like that was necessary after 7 years there. But my boss was like, "Well, it's COVID times still. Everyone's working remote. You could just work remote." And I was like,
no, they he
"No."
kinda pushed your hand. He pushed your hand
Yeah,
a little bit.
I mean, I almost, and I could see myself getting talked into something like that, but I was like, "No." I've already had many conversations with myself about this. Like, I'm gonna try it. And, I always had in my mind that if things didn't work out, I could go back to landscape architecture. There are
Mm,
firms all over the country. So I just needed to give myself this fair shot.
I love that. I love that. Okay. So during the time when you were in San Francisco area, that's when you met Colette Perry,
Yeah.
correct? Okay. So I want to talk about collaborations and I know you probably feel this too that the miniaturist and stop motion communities are so generous and so kind. And
Yeah.
it's such
Yeah.
an awesome group of people. How did your relationship with her start? And then what were you able to collab with her when you did? And she's a stop motion artist. If you guys don't know, look her up. She's amazing.
Yeah, she's absolutely incredible, and she has all these courses teaching people how to do stop motion professionally and with their phone, so she's just a great resource in that respect. I found her on Instagram because I loved her work, and that was around the time. It was before I was thinking that making miniatures could be a full-time job in any capacity. And one of the first things I did when I was doing craft shows was I made laser cut dollhouse kits and dollhouse furniture kits, like
Mhm.
modern the first it's one of the few modern
I was
dollhouse
gonna
kits.
say you were kind of ahead of your time on that.
Yeah, they're really, I mean, there was always Lundby, which is, iconic for being modern, but, this was before Target had modern dollhouses and Michaels had modern dollhouses. So at the time, I felt like it was something kind of special and unique. And I wanted a way to advertise it. So I reached out to Colette and asked her if she could give me a price on making a stop motion video for me. And she, looked at my work and she's like, actually, I need some miniature props for a client project.
Perfect.
Yeah. And she was like, so I can just teach you how to do stop motion. And in exchange, you can make some props for me. And I was okay. Yeah. And I think one of the first things she ever hired me for was, she needed someone to make a gingerbread house and from a kit. So all I had to do was decorate it. And she was going to pay me $500. And I cannot tell you how shocked I was that anyone would pay me that kind of money to do something that I would pay to do. Like I was like, I could
Amazing.
make gingerbread houses all day long and you're going to pay me? So that really opened my eyes to what was
Mhm.
possible because I didn't know that um it was really like in the early days, 2016, there were influencers and stuff, but it was kind of at the beginning of content creation as a job. So and Colette would tell me all the time, she's like, you could definitely make this into a job. But it took, I think 5 years of her telling me that before I finally was like, okay, maybe you're right. Maybe I could do this.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a great to have a fan in that world to be able to say, "You can do it," is
Yeah.
huge. No, that's really
I mean,
big.
she changed my life. There's no doubt about
Yeah, yeah. No, and she's such a love of a person for
it.
sure.
Yeah. And
Well,
she's
so
still
are
on
you.
my
You guys are
toes.
a good pair. I love that.
Yeah.
So as your visibility kinda grew, and this is we're gonna get into other stuff, but I'm just curious, like, how do you think about, like, showing up for the next wave of miniaturists and people coming up? Because you've really figured this out, and you're a giving person. Like, what do you feel like you wanna either show or I know you teach on Domestica and some other things, but, like, what does that mean to you?
I think the most important thing for me, you know, I think I dabbled in YouTube tutorials and occasionally I'll do a random tutorial on Instagram or TikTok. But for me, I think the most valuable and important role is to just be there when someone reaches out and has a question.
Mm. Mhm.
Don't like when people are gatekeeping about things. And obviously, there's artists who work for years and years to develop a technique, and that's different. But if I'm
Yeah.
just like posting something that I learned from someone else, like I want to be able to share those resources. And I know when I was starting out, even today, I still ask people, "Hey, what do you use? What material do you use for this? And how else can you learn unless someone tells you?" There's no other way. I mean, you can experiment and figure it out, which there's plenty of that as well. But it's
It's
just
nice to go right to the source and have
yeah,
them answer.
there's a
That's pretty
whole
great.
community
Yeah.
doing this. We shouldn't have to all start from ground zero, or the bottom floor every single time we want to learn a new skill.
Yeah, and again, a wonderful thing about this community, people are so
Yes,
generous
yeah,
with their
people are
information,
very
it's
welcoming.
amazing. Okay, so I wanna talk about your house. So you moved, you're living with your parents when you were
Yep,
transitioning to
yeah,
homeownership and being an aunt and all those cool things. So this house is mid-century modern, right?
yeah,
And diamond in the rough.
uh-huh, to say the least.
Is it
No,
okay,
no,
okay,
it's
is
not
it
done. But it's definitely so we've been here about 3.5 years now. So we've
you've
definitely
done a
made a
lot
lot
in
of
that
yeah,
time.
we've made a
Yeah.
lot of significant progress, and I think the good thing is that both my husband and I are not afraid of trying new things. So we do a lot of watching YouTube and figuring it out, borrowing tools. We have a couple of neighbors that have, pretty nice wood shops, so they've been able to help us out when they can, which is amazing. But, there's definitely things basically, if we physically cannot do it, or if we think there's a chance we're gonna make it worse by attempting to do it, that's when we bring in the professional. At this point yeah, at this point, we have made we have a really good relationship with our contractor, and he is our go-to for everything. So, we've conquered most of the structural things, which is
So
good.
with a house that's mid-century modern,
Yeah,
especially a mid-century modern house, how do you balance out that like what do you keep? What do you reinterpret? What kind of goes because it needs to be updated in terms of being
yeah.
modern? I don't know, plumbing, electricity, all those things. How does that work for
I
you?
think one of the good things about this house, it wasn't because it wasn't in pristine condition. There wasn't a lot that felt super sacred to it. That nothing was. There were very few things that were original. The kitchen's not original. The bathrooms were not original. So there's things that we definitely wanted to keep. We wanted to keep the wood walls. We wanted to keep the Malm style fireplace. we wanted to keep the exposed rafters. I mean, all those things are the reason we fell in love with the house, and so all of those things have absolutely stayed. In terms and then, there was things that just, like, absolutely could not stay because they were damaged beyond repair. So we had to take off the entire roof over our bedroom.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah, so the first year that we were there after it partially collapsed, which was terrifying, but that gave us an opportunity to actually give it more of a mid-century feel. Like, that portion of the house had I don't know what, when it was built or what, but it had sort of like a rustic feel, like the beams on the
Yeah,
ceiling were rustic, and so we got an opportunity to make it match the ceiling on the rest of the house, which really still did have
cool.
a century feel. And I think, probably the biggest thing, and also maybe the most hated on the internet, is that we decided to do polished concrete. We don't have a basement. It's a slab on grade. And so once we pulled up the carpet, which was pretty badly water damaged and was holding a lot of those water damage smells, once we pulled that up, there was some pretty wild green linoleum tile that was unfortunately it was really cool and weird and honestly, like, quirky enough that I would keep it, but it was just in such bad condition that it had to come
Yeah,
up, and at that point, we were looking at the concrete, and I was like, "I love it." So we
yeah,
sanded and polished, and, it looks kind of like a factory, it looks a little bit like a garage, and a lot of people really don't like that, but to me, I think it's just, like, this amazing part of the house that
yeah.
we find out. Yeah, I love
That's
it.
all that
So
matters. So
cool.
you make tiny things,
Yeah.
and then obviously you're working on big, giant things with this
Yes.
house. Did
Yep.
did the two ever talk to each other? Those worlds?
Yeah, I think they do. A lot of times I'm figuring something out by making it in miniature first.
Mm,
So that's been great. I get inspiration from the things I make in miniature, which are obviously a lot less. Well, actually, maybe not always, but more often than not, less expensive than doing them in full scale, especially when it comes to tile and things like that. But then there have been a few brand opportunities as well. For example, when we first moved in, I got to work with Room and Board, which is a
cool.
great furniture company. And they, in exchange for making a bunch of videos for them and making miniature versions of their products, they gave us a table and a chair and a
Oh,
rug. And so
brilliant.
it's pretty exciting because I have those things now in miniature and in full size, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. So you mentioned brands, so I'm gonna
Mhm.
transition into that because you do a
Yeah.
lot of what you do L'Oreal and Warby Parker, Barbie. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
full
Dream.
circle for you. When you're deciding to work with a brand, what's non-negotiable for you and how much, creative freedom do you have?
I don't think that there is a ton that's non-negotiable. I think now in this political climate, there are probably brands that maybe I wouldn't work with just because
Mhm,
we don't align in our
mhm.
core beliefs.
I hear that, yep.
But I do think that the majority of the brands I've worked with, I see eye to eye with, which is really refreshing. Like, they're vocal about how they feel, and so am I. And so there's not really a lot of issues in terms of who I work with. The brands I've worked with have been amazing. A lot of times they might come in with an idea. Maybe they want to see a bathroom but I would say the majority of them don't have a clear vision of what they want things to look like, which is a lot of fun for me because, I have a huge Pinterest gallery of things I love. And so if they say, we want a modern bathroom, modern kitchen, I can pull from things I know that I've wanted to make and
So
kind of
fun.
bring that
Mhm,
in. Yeah, which is fun. But then,
mhm.
it's really helpful when a brand has a clear idea because it gives me, straightforward plan of action. But, I think the blend is really nice.
So these tiny, tiny things that you make for these some of these videos for these brands, do you just have a day where you're just, like, printing, a whole bunch of stuff all at once, like a factory almost, and you lay it out?
Yeah.
I mean, that's intense. There's a lot of little stuff in
It's
those
a lot of little
videos.
stuff. Yeah. I think I definitely lean on 3D printing and laser cutting a lot in my work. And I think just for the speed at which brands want their work delivered, it's kind of a necessity. And, I do love it because it makes things very accurately. It does take a little bit of the fun out of it, when you're not like making things completely by hand. But yeah, there will be days where I have all three printers going at once and it's a little chaotic, but it really depends on the time of year. When you own your own business, obviously there's,
Yeah.
highs and
What's the
lows.
what's the, year? I'm always interested in when you're working with brands. When
Yeah.
does it, like, crazy business start, and then when do you get to rest? And is there a kind of a fiscal
Yeah.
year for that sort of thing?
There usually is a pattern. I would say the beginning of the year is always slower because, brands are just figuring out their marketing budgets. And especially the first few weeks of the year, no one's ready to work. They don't remember what they did for a job. So everyone's kind of like, don't talk to me. And then
Yeah.
the holidays is definitely the busiest time. I always tell my friends that I don't ever want to say no to someone because when you work for yourself, you don't know when the dry spell is coming. And so I'm always nervous about saying no, but, this year was just, miniatures are just having their moment, and so a lot of the miniaturists that I know were having to say no to work at Christmas, which was hard for all of us. You're like,
Do you feel like a lot of brands don't understand how long it takes to make some
definitely,
of
that's
these
definitely
things?
part of the issue. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I just don't if you're not in it, you don't understand. So who was the first brand you worked with and how did they come to you? Did you go to them? How did that work?
So Colette Perry, my wonderful stop motion friend, she actually had a course teaching people how to reach out to companies, which I took. That was the first thing I did the first week of my self-employment. One of the things she's like, pick your dream brand and reach out to them. And so I picked Warby Parker and I said, this is a long shot. I'm sure nothing's going to come from this. But I think the timing was just really perfect because they had just brought on a new marketing person. And I think she was also kind of looking for something different to bring
Mhm.
in. So it just really was perfect timing. And I think, I don't know who says that quote, but, luck is being prepared, half being prepared and
Meets opportunity.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank
I
you.
love that.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's really true. I do feel like I'm constantly sending it's definitely a numbers game. I'm sending emails to brands all the time. I know if 1% of them get back to me, that's about
Yeah,
average.
yeah.
It's really a numbers game, and it just so happened that this brand that I loved, that I was wearing Warby Parker glasses already. Yeah, and so we worked.
It's a great story. Have you ever heard their origin story
Yeah,
on,
I watched
How I
I
Built
listened to their
This?
yes, exactly.
I love
It was
that
great.
podcast. It's a great story, and it
Yeah.
fits what you do perfectly. Like, I can see how you guys fit together in terms of the
Yeah,
marketing piece.
it's been great, and they're always looking for creative ways. They partner with a lot of creatives, so it's really nice to see
Yeah.
a lot of brands that are starting to do that. Whether it's miniatures or whether it's painting or cookies, there's a lot of that happening, which I think is refreshing.
Yeah, it definitely is. Well, because artists speak, they're gonna save the day in the end. The
Yeah.
artists are gonna save the day. I am completely convinced of that. Do you have a dream collaboration you haven't done yet that you wanna do?
Yes, I would love to work with IKEA. I would love to work with IKEA. I
Will
have
you
written
have little frustrated people who are throwing up their hands trying to make their products?
Yeah, but pretty much. Yeah, that would be pretty funny, the tiny instruction booklet. No, but I've always loved IKEA, and I think the first, laser cut dollhouses I did were very reminiscent of IKEA in I mean, hopefully the instructions were a little bit more clear, but I don't know. But I think they would be a really fun company to work with
That's a perfect match for sure. Yeah,
one
perfect
day.
match. One day. No, I could see it. I could totally
Just
see
keep
it.
putting it out there.
Yeah. Well, besides that, and you wrote your book. So tell us about your books and how you decided to do that. I have it, by the
Yeah.
way. It's a great book.
Is titled 50 Makes for Modern Miniatures, which is a mouthful. And, it was actually just, I think, like a month before we were going to close on our house that my publisher reached out to me. I think this is a really unusual way to go about writing a book. I don't actually know how they found me. They just emailed me and asked if I wanted to author a book for them about miniatures. And they told me the title. At first, I was like, "This is definitely a scam," because who
Did
are
you
these
really?
people and why did they pick me? But we had a phone call and, they were really nice and they had all these other great art books. And so I said, "How about 20 makes for modern miniatures?" And they're like, how about 50? So in the midst of, renovating our house and getting all moved in here, I decided to write this book because when else was I going to get an opportunity for someone to ask me
Yeah.
to write a book for them?
Yeah.
So
So you had to do all the projects, photograph them as you
yes.
were writing them. Oh,
Yeah, I did it was a lot. It was a lot because I think the whole book I had to do in a matter of maybe 4 months. And then, yeah.
wow.
And then, there
So
was
did you
some,
just you put everything else on hold?
yeah,
Like all your other projects, you just had to
right.
just do the book, I would
Yeah.
imagine. Wow.
So, I mean, we bought the house and the first thing we did was we had to renovate my studio, which was a really rundown garage bay, but I needed a place to write the book and, photograph all the projects. So this ended up being the top priority and, got it done. So I'm proud of it. I think I
Hey, I'm a little jealous that the top priority was getting your studio done. That sounds pretty nice to me.
yeah, I mean, probably there would have been a lot of other things that should have been the priority, but
I'm so sorry. I'm
no,
just
you're
my listeners, I've got a cold, but I was not gonna miss this call, so here we are. Talk to me about Domestika and how that came about and what people can learn from that class.
Domestika is really, really a great platform if you don't know of it already, because I'm a very visual learner, and so I like to have things kind of spelled out for me and steps, basically dumbed down as much as possible. And
Yeah,
Domestika being a visual course, it's all online. The camera crew, it's so professional. And they really, when they're having you build your course, when they're helping you build your course, they really guide you in a very precise way to make it something that's really easy to digest as a viewer, which I think is great. So in my course, we make, I think, 3 things, a rug,
mhm,
couch, a plant, a table. Remember
mhm.
something else, but it escapes me.
I think that's it, yeah.
But yeah, so that actually, that was also one of the first things I took on. That was right after Warby Parker. I don't know how they found me again, just luck in social
Well,
media.
no, you were on TV. I mean, that kinda
That's
helps.
true, but, not many people actually watch me, so I don't know.
On.
Although, hopefully that had something to do with it. But yeah, so we filmed that course, and it was great. It's still available. They're always running amazing sales. You can get it for, like, a
Yeah,
dollar sometimes. But I've
yeah.
taken so many Domestika courses, and they're all wonderful.
Yeah, same. It's a good company,
Yeah.
definitely. That's kinda how I got started on my miniatures was Domestika,
Oh, that's
just
right,
during
yeah, I took,
COVID.
a
Yeah,
class by Jessica Dance on Domestika. She's also a miniaturist and artist, and
super
it
good.
was phenomenal.
So, speaking of other miniaturists, are there any heroes out there or people that just even friends or collaborators or people that you have looked up to besides Colette that you've learned from?
Oh my gosh, how much time do we have?
Yeah, yeah. It's a great community.
Yeah, it is. I don't wanna leave anyone out, but I think, kind of the key people are Christine at Paper Doll Miniatures.
Mhm.
She does a lot of brand work as well. She is essentially my coworker. I mean, I talk to her probably throughout the day more than I talk to my husband because
I love that
all
you
day
have a buddy.
long. Yeah, it's so helpful, just to talk pricing or what's the best way to do something, and it's just with her, even though we do the exact same thing, there's never been an ounce of competition there, which I think is so wonderful. It's just really nice to have someone you can share that with. I'm also endlessly inspired by Hannah Lemon.
Oh,
Um,
man.
she's amazing. I'm going to
She's
Guild.
something else.
Yeah, and I'm get to finally meet her, so I'm really excited about
Cool.
that. And my friend Erica, Mini House on the Line, she just created this
Mm,
project where she made a miniature store and she
her
made
store.
all the products, and it is
I know.
absolutely
Amazing. It's
perfection.
amazing. Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
but I mean, the list really goes on and on because at this point, especially this last year, I really had the opportunity to, just because there was a lot of work coming in, reach out to other miniaturists and hire them for aspects of the projects.
Cool.
So
Yeah.
that's been really great and a really great way to grow my community. Erica Patera, Petite Provisions Co. She makes almost all the food for my projects, and she is
Mm,
amazing. Yeah, look, you
these
feel
are
like
like
you could eat.
ultra talented people.
It's crazy. Yeah, there's so
Me
many
too.
amazingly talented people. I mean, yeah, I could really go on for hours.
Did you ever do any of the shows, or did you wanna do any of the shows like Philadelphia or
Uh,
Chicago or
I only this past year was my first time going to shows in general as a customer, and I just really like that. I like walking around and seeing, and as much as I make miniatures, I most of my stuff is done, you know, like I have a couple of things I sell. I don't have a lot of things that I would be able to sell in person. So I really just enjoy like going there, shopping, meeting my friends, and then, that's few things that I sell I put on Etsy or my website.
Yeah, and you have a great Etsy shop.
Thank you.
And I'm gonna put a picture here of the little table that I bought the file for the Glowforge. I'm finding, laser printing I'm new to it,
That's great.
but it is so difficult.
I know.
The learning curve on some of these things. So what advice do you have for people who are starting, especially miniaturists, with 3D printing or laser? Like, what's the best resource to
Yeah,
figure it
I
all
mean,
out?
I still frequently go to Etsy for digital files. Oh, I mean, my first choice is always to make something myself, but I do feel like if you're starting out, you do need to have a pretty good knowledge base of Illustrator or a
Mhm.
similar type program. And, a lot of people coming into it don't have that necessarily. So I think, for just getting started, I mean, you can find a file for absolutely anything on Etsy, whether it's a laser cutter file or a 3D printing file. But I mean, I think in general, YouTube is just one of the best resources. I mean, I've never come across a problem that someone else hasn't already experienced.
It's
So
true.
there's usually someone out there or, just posting to your own community and reaching out to other people who are working with similar tools.
Yesterday, I wanted to make a little tiny paper towel roll. I
Yeah.
kid you not, on YouTube, I put in how to make a tiny
There
paper
you go.
towel,
Yep.
and,
There's a
like,
video for
4
everything.
videos popped up. I'm like, "God, I love this
Exactly.
channel.
I
I
know,
love it, I
it's
love it."
amazing, and I mean, things like, Square to Kath from Square to Spare, she has an amazing YouTube video, and she does both, handmade items and, laser cut and 3D printing, so she has a really good balance of all those things, which is nice.
And her 3D printing pieces are so clean. I've noticed that. When
She
I
makes them
print them, they're
so
just
easy to
so,
assemble.
so
Yeah,
clean and, like, easy to assemble and not a lot of
yeah.
rough edges. I love her stuff. She's
She's
kinda one of
just
my
she's
favorites,
a
for
great
sure.
person too in the community because she's always
Is
willing
she?
to share knowledge, yeah.
Yeah, I wanna see her face. I've never seen her face. I always have that kinda sweet voice, that she uses
Oh,
when she
I know,
talks.
she's just, like, such a
She's so
sweet
adorable.
human.
So what does success look like for you now versus, like, when you just started right after the show and you wanted to go for it?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously there's the financial aspect. I want to be able to pay my bills. I want to be able to afford healthcare. But I think, for me, the thing that I look for is just like, am I enjoying what I'm doing?
Yeah.
And I think the litmus test for that is, because there are times I get stressed, whether it's I have too much work or I don't have enough work. And I think, through all of that, through all of that stress, I ask myself, would I rather be doing my old job or this? And the answer has always been this.
Mhm.
So I know that I'm on the right track, and so I feel like that must be what success is.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's a great answer. What kind of world are you excited to build next? Do you have one in your head already? Maybe it's just for you.
Yeah, I actually have just started getting into making miniature flowers and plants. And I've dabbled in that a little bit, but I bought some materials from Paywin. I don't know her handle, but Paywin Pettygrand, and she sells materials and she sells stamps, and she's just a really great source of knowledge. She does teach a lot of classes at the shows as well. And so learning from that and just wanting to build as many miniature plants as I could fit in my studio.
Time consuming, huh? Time
They're very
consuming
time
for
consuming,
sure.
but honestly, with the state of the world and the news going on, it's really nice to have something meticulous to do with your hands so that I'm not, scrolling on my phone. That and weaving
Uh,
baskets, those 2 things, mini baskets is like those 2 things are keeping me
that's
sane.
right, I saw your baskets. Yeah, those are sweet. So, that leads me to a question that I hadn't even thought about that I wanna ask you about. When as an artist, a lot of people, when they look at our feeds, they say, "I don't wanna hear your opinions about the world. I
Mhm.
just want you to make art, and I want to do your tutorials and buy your stuff, and I don't really care what you think about things."
Yeah.
And lately, you've been really vocal, and me too, about things. What made you get to the point where you're like, I'm brave, I'm just gonna put this out there, and I don't care. I don't care if I lose followers, I don't care if people say, "Just make art," or whatever. What is
Yeah.
that like for you right now?
I don't think I've never held back because I was afraid of what people were going to think, because
Mhm.
I know very clearly where I stand, and I know that there are thousands of people who see the world the way I see it.
Right.
And so, yeah, I might lose followers, which I have, or I might lose out on a project, which I don't know if I have. No one's ever said I'm pulling out because of your political beliefs. They may have just
Mhm.
never reached out because of them. But if I lose all of the people that feel that way, that's fine because there's hundreds of thousands of people that will take their place. The world I'm creating is meant for people who want to live in a world that's, focused on equality and morality and treating people with dignity, and it's not a place for people who don't feel that way.
Well said, yeah.
The only time I've ever not said something is either because I don't feel I know enough about the topic to speak on it
Mhm.
thoughtfully, or, because I know that people do look to my page as a place to, find lighthearted content. And I do want to be that place in the world where there's just something silly to look at because you don't want your entire feed to be horrible news. But it
Right.
is fine. It's about finding that balance. There is definitely a whiplash where I'll post something political and then the next picture will be like, look at my cat doing something stupid. I feel like we need that kind of levity because it's just it's
That's
gonna
life.
it's just what's gonna keep us going. So, I don't know, I'm trying to find that balance.
No, it's a hard balance to find, but I loved reading that from you, you know? Just
Thanks.
leave. If
Yeah.
this isn't
You
something
don't have to
that's
tell
for
me.
you,
You just go.
bye-bye. Bye, Felicia.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, what would you tell somebody standing on the edge of their career where they have health insurance and a
Mm,
steady income and, they have their vacation days and all the things, but they've got something they really, really love
yeah.
and they're really good at it? What would you say to them as they stand on that creative edge of taking a leap?
Okay, I have 3 thoughts. The first is that you don't have to do it all at once. I think for me, it was definitely a slow burn. I started doing things on the side in my free time and then, leveled up and doing paid work in my free time. And so just kind of making those steps incremental so that it doesn't feel like you're stepping off the edge of a cliff. I think that really helped. The second thing is that you have to do things that I feel like when you tell someone that you're creative, everyone immediately comes in with all these ideas of what you should do. You know, you should sell this, you should make that. And a lot of those are not going to be, they're going to be disingenuous to who you are. And the things
Mhm,
that are going to propel you forward are the projects that you're actually excited about. So making sure that you share, the work that you want to do more of and the work that you're excited about. And then the last thing is just to ask for the opportunities you want. I think there's on so many times
show
that
up.
yeah, for making it, whether it's, reaching out to companies you want to work with, you just have to people can't guess for you what you want. So you have to kind of put yourself out there. And I think, I do think that that's how I ended up on making it was just being persistent and asking for what I wanted. And I feel like that's been true for a
Mhm.
lot of situations in my career.
Mm. Yeah, gosh, that's great advice. Well, people are afraid. I mean, what's the worst thing that can happen? They say no. That's it. So what's coming next? You said you're going to guild school. So tell us, I know, a lot of people know what that is, but why don't you tell us about what that is and have you
Yeah.
been before
So
and
this
what are you
will be
most
my
excited
first
about?
time. So Guild
Ooh.
School is in a week in Maine, where the International Guild of Miniature Artisans puts on basically camp for adults where you go and you take some really intensive courses. There's 12-hour courses, 24, 36, 48, and then all these other opportunities to meet and learn people. I've never been, but I've heard amazing things. So I am going this year and I've got a whole slate of new skills to learn, which I'm very excited for.
Excellent. I can't wait. It's on my list in the next
Yeah.
couple
I know
years.
it's
I really
it's
want to
definitely a
go.
big expense, but I saved up and I'll do it this year and then, maybe take a couple of years off.
Silly little question. What's your favorite tool you can't live without? What do you use the most?
X-Acto knife, craft knife of
Man,
any
I'm
kind.
telling you, everybody says
Can't it
everybody.
you can take this part off and all of a sudden it's a flathead screwdriver. It's just the multi-tool of multi-tools.
It's a good one. Okay, and, where can we find you
You
and
can
all the
find me
things?
at Chelsea Makes on Instagram. ChelseaMakes.com is my website. And if you just Google Chelsea Makes, you'll find everything else, I'm
I
sure.
yes, a lot of good stuff on Pinterest too.
Oh, good.
And, my last question for you is, this is one I ask everybody, it's my favorite question. What did little Chelsea love that grown-up Chelsea finally gets to honor through this work?
Oh, I mean, it's unending, but I think little me could never have imagined that I would be able to get paid for making tiny things. And so getting to work with Barbie, Mattel for a couple of different projects was really kind of like the most full circle moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I bet. She'd be really proud of you.
Yeah,
Little
I think
Chelsea would
so.
be really, really proud of you. Well, I'm so thrilled to be able to have spent this time. Sorry, I sound like a frog.
It's
And
okay.
I and I will continue to watch your journey and just thank you for everything you put out into the world. It's joyful, delightful, and thank you so much.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. I always love chatting with you on the little internet corner we have.
I know, it is good, and everything you're doing is it's such a nice break from the world, and thank you for that as well.
Yeah, I try
Okay.
a little bit of
Yeah.
a mix in there.
All right. Take care of yourself.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Before you go, you can explore my artwork on Instagram and on my website, Lara Blair Art Studio. Links are in the show notes. And if you'd like to stay connected, I'd love for you to join my newsletter where I share new work, stories, and behind the scenes thoughts from the studio. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.